Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Securitron number EL-EPT electric links, electric power transfer. This is what the packaging looks like when it arrives to you. Let's open it up and take a closer look at the item. Let's start with a visual tour of the item itself. You're going to have a number of items, and there is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up the installation instructions. And all of these pieces are certainly identified on page 1 of the installation instructions. This is what's called the lead cover. This is what you're going to prep into the edge of the door, whether it be a wood door or a steel door. Okay, that's the lead cover. Let's take some dimensional properties as we go along. Overall length of the unit, about 12 and just shy on 3/4. Overall width, about 15/16, and about 1 inch on the body itself, and that is indeed the prep that they want you to make. Overall depth of the body, about 5/8. Looks like the tabs don't change any height at all. Looks like it's basically flush. Okay. Overall height of the body itself, about 10 and 3/16 or so. Then you have the flexible shield. Okay, you've got the upper portion and the lower portion. This is the upper portion. They are not identical. The lower portion is the part that goes to the frame, which requires a small hole because the lead cover goes into the door, and this will ultimately end up mounting to the inside here, with this being into the frame itself. So your installation will look like that. And we're going to go over the installation instructions in a moment. Overall length of the flexible shield body, tab to tab, looks like it's about 9 3/4. Okay. This is an Electrolinks model, which means you're going to have Electrolinks connectors on both ends. The installation instructions also call out the flush tab brackets. These are mounting plates that you'll use, possibly if it's a steel door. If it's a wood door, you won't. You're going to have 6 632 3/8 type F self-tapping screws, along with 4 sheet metal screws. You'll have 2 split washers, and then 2 832 3/16 screws. Finally, you're going to have the bezel plate, which will be used for the frame portion and really helps disguise the size of hole that is necessary to be drilled, which is why it's wider than just what would be technically required. That covers all of the components that come in the package. Let's move on to page 1 of the installation instructions. Before we move on to the installation instructions, let's go over what this item is. The EPT electric power transfer provides a concealed way by which to transfer low voltage power from the wall to the door. You can run power data through this unit to electrified locks, to electrified exit devices, or request to exit switches, a door status monitor. Anything that requires low voltage you can use via this system, and other ASA properties, other ASA Oblong pieces of hardware that use the Electrolinks connectors to reliably transfer that power and do so in a concealed sort of fashion. Okay. Durable stamped steel housing and flexible spring steel conduit make the EPT suitable for most types of swinging doors with butt hinges or continuous hinges, or pivot hinges up to 3/4 inch offset. Okay, they do have an SC version, a swing clear version of this, so that you can account for the way that in a swing clear application the door opens and moves outside of the opening. Basically, the unit changes so that it can get out and around, so to speak. In addition to that, the distance between the door when it's in the closed position and the door when it's in the fully open position, the distance from the frame to the door when it's in the full open position can be measured. So you have to be mindful that the standard unit, I believe, is up to just 2.5 inch, that dimension. And if you need something greater, like as if you had wide throw hinges or some other scenario that caused that dimension to be great, you'll want to take that into account. We'll hit the installation instructions in a moment. The EPT that we have here basically weighs 3/4 pound shipping weight. UL10C listed, CAN 4S104 listed, UL634 listed, ULC ORD 634 listed, ANSI, SDI, BHMA A250.13 listed, and Windstorm listed for pressures of 60 foot-pounds plus or minus. Okay, the dimensions we're going to go into when we get, well, we already covered the dimensions and the parts. Now, you are going to order this as an EL. The part number consists of 3 major sections. The wire connectors. In absence of anything in the wire connector column, you would not have any connectors. They're just going to be wires. If you add EL to the front of it, you'll get the Electrolinks connectors. An EPT will give you a 10-inch cord, and the EPTL will give you an 18-inch cord. The longer cord is going to give you that better reachability. If there's nothing in the third column, so wire connectors are the first column, nothing or EL. The shape, the EPT or the EPTL, that's the second column. Third column is going to be the door swing. If you leave it blank, they're going to assume that you have a standard door swing, standard hinges, or standard 3/4 inch offset pivots. If you have swing clear hinges, add SC to that area. And then you can also do a C5E option for 9 wires, should you have that requirement. Now, moving on to page 1 of the installation instructions, and let's go over it now. The EPT or the EPTL, the 10 or the 18-inch version, allows an electric lock or an exit device such as a Securitron touch sense bar or a touch sense handle device to be installed while concealing the cabling on the hinge side of the door between the door edge and the door frame. The EPT-10 or the EPT-L includes a flexible steel shield approximately 5/16 inside diameter. The EPT or the EPTL power transfer devices are able to be installed onto doors accompanied with full mortise butt hinges, continuous hinges, or offset pivot type hinges. The pivot type hinge styles may have up to a maximum of 3/4 inch offset. The offset on a pivot is the dimension from the face of the door to the vertical axis of pivoting. There are 3/4 in offset pivots. There are 3/4 offset, 1.5 inch offset. They're saying you can't use the 1.5 inch offset. The product overview. Back up, there's a note. The EPT, EPTL models are not compatible with doors containing swing clear type hinges or center pivot type doors. What they're saying is don't use the standard base model on a swing clear. You have to order it the swing clear model. Using it on a center hung, no, you can't use it on center hung pivots at all, and there's no option to make that work on a center hung pivot whatsoever. The installation instructions go on to say, upon unpacking this product, an inventory should be made to ensure that all of the required components have been included, because you'll need all of these pieces, along with the installation instructions and the template, which is included. And the template is a really great document that will allow you to do a reality check on everything prior to cutting anything, along with the installation instructions. So you're always going to want to make sure that you have all the parts you need before you start doing anything and mitigate any shortage immediately. We've already gone over all of the components per page 1, and it's all indeed here. It is recommended to edge mount the EPT, EPTL in the upper half of a steel door and the lower half of a wood door. Now, I don't know for sure why they're saying to do that, except for perhaps maintaining better integrity of a wood door up above, where more of the weight of the wood door resides at the top end of the door. I can't think of why they'd want, in a steel door, this unit between, say, hinge 1 and 2, probably closer to the second hinge, and then between 2 and 3 if it's a 7-foot door or up to 90 inch. If I think of something better for that, I'll advise. I always see these installed between hinges 1 and 2, but I generally see them installed in steel doors. In airports, you know, those terminals where they have to have reporting done on that door or electrical control on that door, that's where you'll see them. The EPT, EPTL lead cover should be a minimum of 6 inch from the middle butt hinge cutout or centered between the butt hinges. Depending on the height of the door, you know, I'm gonna stick this closer to the middle hinge on a standard door, usually above the second hinge. Prior to installation, ensure that you have the correct version of the unit for the door and frame. We talked about the variants on how to order it previously. The EPTL is used for longer door swing gap distances greater than 2.5 inch. So let's talk about that. You are going to use the 18-inch version or the EPTL version in this scenario. A simple measurement may be taken to determine the correct EPT or EPTL for the application. To measure the swing gap distance, open the door to its fully open position, its maximum that it can go to. Measure the distance from the center line of the door edge to the center line position on the door frame as shown in Figure 1. And Figure 1 is actually on the top of page 2. If the distance is 2.5 inches or less, the standard EPT can be used. If it's greater than that, you have to use the EPTL. And that also, in the installation instructions, tells us, or I should say in the product brochure, that it's up to 5 inch. So be mindful of that. Once the correct unit is determined, use the following step-by-step procedure to correctly install the EPT, EPTL. Note, the door style, number of hinges, distance between the hinges may vary according to the door, may vary depending upon door manufacturer. Consult the specific door manufacturer to help decide which unit will best suit your application. If you are ordering this hardware and are unsure of which one to order and you do not have an existing door and frame to walk to, you're going to need to determine that information. You will likely want to call the technical support department at your door and frame supplier and have the hardware list in front of you so that all of that can be laid out. You might want to draw on inventory that you have and mimic something, make something up. Your ability to be able to determine which version you need. By far the most common will be the EPT because you're dealing with 5 by 4.5 inch hinges or 4.5 by 4.5. Swing clear or wide throw hinges are very unusual in this sort of application, but not unheard of. So you'll want to definitely review that prior to placing an order. That diagram on the top of page 1 talking about this center line, or this dimension. So you're basically going to run a tape measure from the center line of the door, meaning where you'll position this, it'll be the vertical center line of the door and the frame, and put your tape measure between there, and then determine where you're going to go to in terms of the model that you'll be using. Okay, the EPT is by far the most common. Okay, now let's move on to installing this physically into a wood door and frame. Now let's get into how to install the thing. So the lead cover, this is going to go into the door, is where this goes. Okay, the first installation set is going to discuss a wood door and a wood frame, and let's go over it line by line. It's a head scratcher, that paragraph. Using a router, cut the main recess slot into the edge of the door, 0.7 inch deep, as explained in Figure 2 and 3. Okay, so set the main recess slot into the edge of the door, 0.7 inch deep. What they're talking about is the body of the unit. Just this portion. 0.7 deep. That makes sense. I mean, you're going to be almost, basically, you know, just light on, you know, just heavy on 11/16. Okay, so 0.7 deep is what they want. And that makes sense. You're going to have a little bit of room because 3/4, you can see I'm just shy of it. Okay. You're going to cut that, the length of the body. I got 10 1/8 here. Let's see what they say. Let's look at the template at the same time. This is where the reality check portion comes in. If you're going to do the body length, the template tells us, well, it tells us some different information than what the installation instructions tell us. First of all, they're saying for a wood door, make it 0.75 deep. Okay. I would say that that would be more adequate only because if we go 0.7, I mean, you're going to have plenty of room. 0.7, 0.75 is only the thickness of a commercial kick plate. So I would say 0.7 would be adequate. The length they want would be 10 3/4 inch overall length. I measured that. It was about 10 1/8. The important part is 0.7 or 0.75 doesn't get us into any trouble because it'll fit. 10 3/4 now, is that a problem? Well, it's not for the length of the body, but let's look between the distance of the screw holes because you obviously don't want to get outside of that. Okay, so I've stretched that out a little bit, and we get to 10 3/4. You can see that we won't have a problem with that. So that, you're going to come with a, what's the width that they want on the bit? I don't see it in figure 2, even though it must be called out there somewhere. Yeah, I don't see where it's called out. Looking at the template, the drawing specifically is telling us that it's 1 inch wide. Right there. Okay, so 1 inch wide, does that make sense? It does. You'd be fine with that. Now, they also refer to on the template that you have a radius here. And they're calling that out to be a 1/4 inch radius. Okay? So what that means is you're not going to take a 1 inch bit and plunge down 10 3/4. You're not going to do that. You're going to use a 1/2 inch 2-flute carbide bit, and you're going to make that preparation so that you get the 1/4 inch radius on either end, is how you'll end up doing that. Okay. Now, at this point, depending on the center line of where you install it, depending on the center line, you're going to have a body prep for the body. Then it says, reset the router depth to 0.075, 0.075, and the thickness of the flange is 0.075, spot on. You might make that a slightly small amount heavy, maybe 0.003. And route the 2 recessed flange areas for the flush mount tabs. Place the lead cover into position. Okay, stop. So here's our problem, though. That's not 2 1/4 inch radiuses. So if you're going to do that correct, you're going to either change your bit to a 1 inch router bit, or maybe use a Forstner bit, a flat end cutting bit, just the small amount that you need. Come with your router bit 0.075 deep, skim this out, and then come with a Forstner bit perhaps. But the radius that they want on these inside 2 corners and the radius here are different. So you'll have to decide how you're going to do that. How I would probably do it is I would probably start the prep with a Forstner bit here and here to give me a nice 1 inch hole, a 1 inch profile, 0.75 deep. I would then do my body prep, and I would use my 1/2 inch bit, and I would just come in and clean that area out is what I would end up doing. Okay, just the plate portion. You know, I don't make a living with a router, but I've mortised tens of thousands of doors, so, you know, is that the right way to do it? I don't know. It's just the way that I thought that I would do it initially without having done it a first time. So what they want us to do now is place the lead cover into position and mark the location of the cable exit oblong hole and the mounting hole locations. Okay, so what they're saying is get this placed. The oblong hole goes towards the top of the door. Mark that. Mark these locations. I would also mark these locations back here as well. Remove the lead cover and drill the 2 holes using an 1/8 of an inch bit, 1/2 inch deep. Drill the 3/4 inch diameter hole into the door edge. Pass the cable from, assuming it's an exit device, out through the hole. Out through the hole in the door edge. Pass the cable through the oblong hole in the lead cover. Properly attach the 2 electrical connectors at the door location, obviously here. Mount the lead cover into place using the 2 6x5/8 flathead screws, using 2 of the 6x5/8 flathead, type A screws. Stand by. Yeah, 2 6x5/8 screws that will allow you to attach it here and here. Locate and mark the mounting holes for the flexible shield onto the door frame. So this is going to attach to the back of here with the machine screws that are included, which we'll get to in a moment. Then what they want you to do is mark putting this together for illustration purposes. That'll mount up there. Okay. Now what they want you to do is mark the frame location where you're going to drill this hole. Mark and locate the mounting holes for the flexible shield onto the door frame. Drill the 11/16 diameter hole into the door frame. Drill 2 holes using an 1/8 of an inch diameter bit approximately 1/2 inch deep for mounting of the flexible shield. That's going to be down here. Pass the cable through the flexible shield and apply the bezel plate, if not pre-assembled. This bezel plate needs to be included because drilling an 11/16 hole will be otherwise not covered by this unit, is what they're saying. Properly attach the 2 electrical connectors at the frame location and pass into the hole of the door frame. 11/16 hole in the door frame. Mount the flexible shield onto the lead cover up here now with the 2 832 3/16 machine screws with their lock washers, or what they're calling split helical washers. Align the cable and the other end of the flexible shield onto the door frame using the 2 remaining flathead type A screws provided as shown in Figure 4. Figure 4 Figure 4 is all the way on the last page. What needs to be reinforced is that when you install the unit, when you mortise the unit in the edge of the door, that has to be in the center line of the door itself. And that center line needs to match a center line on the frame. So if you've got an 1 3/4 inch thick door and, you know, from theoretically, nominally, from one face of the door to the center line is 7/8, 1/2 inch and 3/4. But you need to make sure that that center line is in line where the rabbet is of the frame. That means you wouldn't just measure from the face of the stop or from the outside of the face of the frame. You actually have to convert that to a center line. So you're going to take the inset of the door, which may be 3/32, and then add that to your 7/8. Or take the distance from the face of the door to the face of the stop and then add that so that you're measuring correctly, because that center line needs to match. Doors and frames don't have the same center line because the door is smaller to account for the fact that it has to fit in the frame. So we always have to translate one to the other to make sure that everything is in the right plane, and that's what's most important in terms of that. Now let's move on to installing it in a metal door and frame. Now, moving on to the metal door and frame, metal doors must have a flush surface mount installation. The door frame manufacturer may prepare a prefabricated tab for internal mounting capabilities or use the flush tab brackets provided. The flush tab brackets are these mounting plates. Okay. The cutout for the lead cover may be cut with a radius or square cornered as noted in Figure 3 and on the template provided. Well, I don't see a reason why they can't. If you square cut the preparation, you're not going to fill it all in, and any manufacturer will certainly have the ability to prep a radius through the unit. So what's going to end up happening is this is going to look like this. So you'll prep the edge of the door. This, if you're ordering a steel door, it's going to have a mounting tab for it, okay? That's just the bottom line. If, however, it doesn't, or you're installing it into an existing door, you're going to cut this preparation, okay? Just 1 inch wide, the overall, which I think is 12.77 inch, a 1 inch radius here. It's not going to be a big deal. A 1 inch hole saw, drilled at the right locations, you'll be able to cut straight and give yourself a nice installation. So the tab will go in and you're going to use, well, let's go back to the installation instructions, not to go ahead of ourselves. The cutout for the lead cover may be cut with a radius or square cornered as noted in Figure 3 and on the template provided. Yeah, I suppose you can. You're not going to fill the entire area. If field retrofit installation is being performed, route the complete perimeter of the bracket and tab area and install the EPTL using the flush tab brackets provided. When mounting the lead cover, drill the mounting holes 1/8 of an inch and use the 632 type F self-tapping screws. Those are the ones that have the feature clearly identifiable on the end of the screw that are what they're calling a self-tapping screw. Maybe a paint clearing type screw or a self-tapping screw that will allow you to go into this bracket, which is made of steel. You might want to pass a tap through that. It is 632. I would advise doing that. Follow the template provided for placement of the screw holes for the flush tab brackets. What that means is, you know you're going to line this up, but they're saying follow the template for where you're going to line this up. Actually, I've got that backwards. Where you're going to line that hole up. Okay. Also, when mounting the flexible shield to the metal door frame, drill the same holes at 1/8 of an inch and use the 2 remaining Type F self-tapping screws. Okay. So you're going to use the same screws to literally go through the edge of the door and get this secured into place to act as the mounting tab. Here we go. Okay. Note, applications containing combinations of doors or frames made of wood or metal follow the proper procedure related to the device as necessary. You know, you're going to drill a hole in the edge of the door to be sure, into the frame, regardless of it being steel or wood, probably steel. Moving on to page 3, the illustration of Figure 3 represents the configurations for both the solid core wood door and metal door installations. This is to help to understand the process for flush mounting the EPT-EPTL in the correct manner for the door application as required. Right. What they're showing us there in Figure 3 is what it's going to look like if it's a wood door versus a metal door, or an aluminum door for that matter. An aluminum door will have the hole drilled directly into the edge of the door, wood or aluminum, and a small countersink for this Type F screw, so that you can run the screw through the edge of the door, pierce the back of the mounting bracket, and then connect it that way down here. It's nice that they include these, because if you're doing they're not mentioning aluminum, but you could sure be doing aluminum as well. It's nice to have those brackets so you don't have to buy them, is the bottom line. Plus, they're not going to, you purchase something, won't have the right offset. This plate requires no offset because of how dreadfully thin that is, given what they expect to be the thickness of the material it's being installed down to, which is this distance right here. Notes. Routing is generally performed in the edge of the door as shown, but this can be reversed with the routing being done in the frame. I do admittedly see these more often installed in the frame. Okay, so can you flip it all around? They're saying yes, you can. In my argument would be that you would certainly want to put this into the frame. You're going to have more coverage, okay, of what's happening. That's what I would end up doing. The electrical notes. To maintain this product's compliance with UL listings, UL 10C and UBC 72-1997, the maximum number of electrical conductors to be used is 12, using 20 or 22 gauge wire. The electrical rating is 1 amp at 12 or 24 volt. So, you know, if you're running 24 volt at 1 amp, you're going to want to be very careful that you're not drawing meaning, you know, 1 amp is the maximum. Regardless of the voltage, don't exceed 1 amp, AC or DC. As the volts go up, the amperage goes down. So if you've got, just be mindful of that. Don't exceed 1 amp. The bottom of page 3, the Electrolinks is a standardized plug connector system which allows for easy installation of door-mounted hardware, such as locking hardware, doors, hinges, or power transfer devices and frames, are available pre-wired from ASA Oblong companies with universal plug-in connectors for a simplified, time-saving field installation. So it's basically a commercial. You can buy ASA products, whether it be Seco, hollow metal that's already pre-wired, and there are other properties that you can just plug together. Sargent, obviously, Corbin Russwin, Yale, etc. Physical installation. The installation of the Electrolinks version, the EL, which is what we have here, is similar to the standard, except that it comes pre-harnessed at both ends with dual harness plug adapters for system accessories as illustrated in Figure 4. The dual harness connectors provided come out of the back side of the lead cover for connection to the door edge accessory devices. The opposite end also comes with a dual harness plug adapter to connect into device signal lines through the door frame accessory devices. Attach all the proper connectors to the harness at the door location. Push the cable and connectors back into the holes of the door. Mount the flexible shield to the lead cover as shown, to the lead cover as shown, with these two holes. Attach the proper connectors at the frame location and push the cable and connectors back into the frame. Mount the flexible shield to the frame as described in Figure 3, in Section 3. And then the bottom of page 4 shows cleanly what this looks like in a completed installation. Okay, so these two center lines must align when the door is closed. That's the bold at the bottom, and that document is really the cleanest way to go about viewing this entire aspect. So I would suggest absorbing that first, reading through the installation instructions, or reading along with my reading of the unit to become comfortable with it. And, you know, if you're ordering doors and frames prepped from the factory, you have little work to do except for drilling holes for the fasteners, because your lead cover is going to be prepped. That's going to be done. You'll have a raceway in the door to the hardware. If you want to have your door manufacturer run some low voltage wire to your specifications, I'm sure that they'll do that as well for an upcharge, etc. If you're doing a retrofit prep in the door in the field for a door and frame, yes, you've got to do a large preparation. If it's aluminum, you can do that with a router and a template. If it's a wood door, that's no big deal. However, be mindful, if it's a fire-rated door in the field, you're not permitted to do this preparation whatsoever as a result of the limitations of NFPA 80 and what can be done in the field to a existing fire-rated door and frame. So be mindful of that. Even though this is listed, you can't field prep it. It has to come prepped from a licensed door manufacturer or licensed shop that is under label service with your Warnock Hersey, your Factory Mutual, or your Underwriters Laboratory. Okay, that concludes the installation instructions, and there's really nothing else to discuss on this unit whatsoever. And if you do have any questions about the Securitron EL EPT flexible power transfer, a very typical and common piece of equipment that you're going to find, especially in today's age with the communication of electrified hardware on a door opening that will permit not only electrical or remote control, but will permit the remote monitoring and the possible maintaining of an audit trail as to what happens at an opening as well. Okay. Applications, like I had mentioned earlier, such as an airport, certainly a nursing home or an institution. These are all places that require code-compliant, total control over an opening, and electrified hardware is really only limited by our imagination in terms of what can be done. Whether you want to know if the door is in the open or closed position, if you want to be able to manually turn that off with a key switch, either on and off or momentarily. You can have annunciators, you can have visual indicators, you can have something communicate to an alarm panel, you can have electromagnetic locks and request to exit switches in lock sets or panic devices. You can put door motion sensors onto that material as well, keypads, card readers, and it just goes on and on and on, etc. And if you throw relays and everything, you can do anything that you can probably imagine. Anyway, having said that and taken up enough of your time, if you have any questions on the EL EPT power transfer from Securitron, please feel free to reach out to us. Their name is quite synonymous with electrified hardware and many other items. There is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Securitron products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. Any questions on this or any other Securitron product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.